Hello everybody, I know it's been a while, but summer's here, heat is in the air as the song goes, and that means with it comes stone fruit. And what does that mean? Well, we're talking about apricots, plums, nectarines, peaches of course, and who could forget the most perhaps luxury item of the lot. Oh, don't forget lychees, maybe even rambutans as well. But the most sought after one of them all, especially around Christmas time, is the cherry. Now I have here two varieties of cherry, or two cultivars you might say, and these are, as you can see, if we zoom in real close, I had to get my hands on. I didn't just want to do, your normal cherry review with these. I didn't just want to do any cherry review. It might surprise you, but I'm just a humble layman here. I don't know all that much about fruit, and so when I saw these cherries, I thought I have to grab them. I have to let the people know what's going on. I'd never seen them before. I'm just sort of a bumpkin, bumbling around the fruit and veg sections in supermarkets, in markets, and when I see something like this that I've never seen before, with a low amount of knowledge that I possess, I have to figure out what's going on here, because this isn't just me trying to bring information to you. It's also me trying to bring information to myself as well. As human beings, we can often sit around and get caught up in our own head and try and think our way out of solutions. But if we just sit and we don't even have to talk to anybody in particular, or anyone at all. If we just sit down and we just talk, or we write it down, like I'm doing to you right now, even though I'm not talking to any specific individual in particular, and I'm not even going to get an answer back, or not really, not immediately, not like you would in a regular conversation, it still helps you to organize your thoughts, not get caught in some sort of loop, not just get stuck. I think that's really important for people, and that's why I'm talking about these today. These are white cherries. You might have seen them advertised as Rainier cherries, but I'm not sure if that quite applies to these cherries in particular. I know they're the same color. If we look, they're a bit like a pink lady. You have the lighter yellower whitish outside here, and then you have the more pink side. But if we take a look at a more sort of normal cherry, though, what is normal these days for cherries? These other cherries that I've picked up, these are, if I look at them, they're a purple, but they're so dark that they might as well be black. And that's usually when I go to stores in cherry season, that's usually what I'm looking at. Cherries like these. Sometimes they come a bit lighter, but usually they're quite purple, quite dark. And you might be a bit confused about that. You might say to me, listen, I've just been out driving around in my convertible, top down, wind blowing through my hair. And when I went and bought that convertible, I said to the man, hey, I want that convertible in cherry red, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful red. But it's not like the cherries that I go into the store and I buy. It's not like a purple. And I said cherry red, it's like a scarlet. It's bright red. What's up with that? Well, the answer to that is is really that there are two types of cherries. And I don't mean the two types of cherries as in the two different really colors that I have here for you today, because these two cherries here are more or less the same actual species of cherry. What I mean when I say two different types of cherries is that we actually have sweet cherries and sour cherries. Now these are sweet cherries, and I know they look quite different, and I haven't really delved into the taste yet. That's what I'm going to be getting to in this review. But when we talk about sweet cherries and we talk about sour cherries, when we talk about the color cherry red, that's really what sour cherries are. Now, I'm not sure the specific name of these varieties of cherries, but your sour cherries are usually like Montmorency cherries, I think, or Morello cherries, and those are really like a bright red. But you never see those when you go into the store. You never really, unless you live in a real cherry growing area When you go into your produce section in the supermarket, or you go down to the markets, very unlikely that you'll see fresh, sour, bright red cherries. Now, why is that? Well, that's because they have a much smaller season than the sweet cherries. They're a bit more fragile as well. I think they have a thinner skin, so they don't survive transportation as well. They don't last as long. But when you do go to a shop, where you are going to find them is in jars, or is in cans, is even in juice. You can get sour or tart cherry juice. Now, when we talk about sour cherries or tart cherries, those are really more for baking or for juicing. When we talk about the cherries that we go into and we get from the store, this is what we're talking about, the sweet cherries here. So that might go a little bit, if you're out there and you're really confused, about the color difference, about why people say cherry red, but whenever you go to the store, the cherries that you buy aren't that red at all. That's the reason. I'm going to explain a bit more about tart cherries probably later on in the review here, but I don't really want to go into it too much. Maybe one day I'll be lucky enough to pick up some tart cherries and review them outright. They're really they're really like a red currant flavor. If you've ever seen fresh red currants, a bit like that. But I really want to stick to these sweet cherries because this is what I'm really excited about. Something that I've never seen before, something I've never tried before. This is what I really want to talk about. But as I said, these are both the same sort of variety of cherry. They're both sweet cherries. Now I forget the specific scientific name for them, but that's not really important. You're not going to go to the store and ask someone for the product in its scientific, Latin name, because the people there are really going to have no idea what you're talking about. They'll probably have no idea what you're talking about if you even just go in and ask for sweet cherries anyway. But here I'm going to take the stems off. I'm going to just have one of each, or maybe two of each actually, because cherries are quite small. I want to get the full flavor range here, and we're just going to start off with the normal cherries, the standard cherry model, cherry version 1.0, as you might be inclined to say. Here we go. Alright, take a little bit of a drink of water here, cleanse my palate. This is high-end stuff here. I want to make sure that I get the full range of flavors that I can with no interference. I try and close my eyes when I do the taste testing a bit. If I could just jump into a sensory deprivation tank really quickly while I chew, I really think that would improve the sensations here. But alas, I'm just a humble man here in my bedroom with some cherries, and sometimes that's all you are in life. Alright, well, very interesting stuff. Oh, so interesting. I tell you, I'm going to have some vivid dreams tonight about these cherries. But let's sort of see if we can separate the two here. I really have to admit that I'm not surprised at the results here. My in-depth oral analysis here. Because when I picked up the cherries, the white cherries, really, what it seemed to me to be is that they were more of a premium model of Cherry, the Rolls Royce of cherries. And what that means in this instance is, from what I can tell, I would say with these white cherries, they really take the extra step, these growers, these hard-working farmers out there, throwing nets over trees, making sure that they get the most cherries out of any given crop. Just the other week, I was out there, and I was out there, hiking over this mountain range. And I don't know if you guys go hiking a lot, but I sort of don't really like the way hiking is sort of referred to. I work with some people and they say, hey, I go hiking this week, and quite a few of them they say they go hiking regularly. I would say the same thing. We go to the same places more or less, but I don't really consider it hiking myself. Now, it's what I say because of course language is a universal way of communicating, and the more universal it is, the more it fulfills its purpose. If I went out there and I said, I went rolling along on my nose, well, people would have a hard time conceptualizing what I really meant by that, when in fact what I meant was hiking. But anyway, you go out hiking, so-called, and what you're presented with is just a starting point and trails going every which way. It depends where you are and how popular the spot is, but a lot of the times, the government, the council, the Environmental Protection Agency, or whoever's in charge of maintaining these conservation parks that people go hiking in, well, they're also responsible for preserving the trails. That's for multiple reasons. It's not just for the ease of the people out walking, but it's also to protect the environment as well, because if you had truckloads of people coming in and they just go stomping on through the forest, disturbing the natural environment, well, that sort of disturbs the purpose of the conservation park to begin with. But anyway, my point is, when I go out there, when I go out into the great outdoors, I go hiking, I don't really just want to be walking down a trail. I feel like that sort of defeats the point. I sort of want to feel a bit like an explorer, an adventurer. So whenever possible, I try and stray off the trail and go out there where it's a bit more difficult traversing the terrain. And I find that much more rewarding and much more fulfilling in the hiking experience. Because otherwise you're just sort of going out for a walk. And while there's nothing wrong with going out for a walk, especially out in nature, I don't consider it really to be being amongst nature. There's still that divide there, but that separates you. That trail, that path that's already set out for you, separates you from the man-made environment and the natural environment. So you're just sort of passing along the outskirts, along the border, looking in rather than being part of it. But anyway, this is a long sort of tangent. Point is, I was out there a few weeks back, and I was walking along quite literally the border around this conservation park. It wasn't the trail that I intended to go on, but it was the one I found myself on nonetheless. But anyway, being mountain ranges, they had a summit, and I didn't know, I had no map with me. Maps were very difficult to find for some reason, I'm not sure why. But I had no map with me, but being that it was a mountain range, I could simply look to see the highest point, and I could say, right, that's where I want to go. And I scurried up to the best of my ability up this mountain face. Not really a face, it was more of a hill, a slope. And eventually I got to the top. And I mean, what I really wanted out of this hiking trip was to get to the other side, because this mountain range sort of separates the metropolitan area from the great beyond. And it doesn't really have to be a metropolitan area, but the point is I exist within the enclosed space between the shore, between the beach and this mountain range. So I've never been beyond that space, past the eastern space over the mountain range. And it's a bit like the hobbits leaving the Shire, you know. I've stepping over this mountain range, and it's not just a matter of driving there or riding over, because there's already a road there. I really wanted the sense of climbing over the top, seeing what lay beyond. And even though we have technology, in a sense, you know, I already knew what lay beyond because I could just look it up. I could just go on Google and see. Anyway, I knew what lay beyond, and that's you might be wondering why the hell I'm telling this long story, but that's where the point of this story lies, because climbing beyond this mountain range, looking down below, what did I see? Cherry trees, you know, hundreds and hundreds of them. Cherry trees aren't cheap, and they take a while to start to bear fruit, but you can just see, and they look like spider webs across the landscape, because of course the orchards, they have to put nets all over these cherry trees, whether they're cherry trees or whatever other fruit trees, to stop all the birds just coming down and eating all their fruit. And really, whatever I saw was kind of irrelevant, because really the fact that I saw anything over the mountain range at all was what I was there for. But these cherry trees, you know, they're quite a lot of work, but lucrative as well. And if you to get back to the point here, these white cherries, and I say to get back to the point, but I really don't remember what the point of the story was at all, apart from the fact that I saw some cherry trees. But anyway, these white cherries, here we are really the Rolls-Royce, the premium model of the cherry. And you can sort of tell that because when you take a normal cherry and you bite down and you compare the two, this has a much thinner skin. You know, when you bite down, you pierce the veil into the dimension of cherry flesh much more readily, and the flesh is a bit more denser and sweeter, I would say. Whereas this, with the normal cherry, skin's a bit thicker, it's a bit less dense, and it tastes a bit more tart, you know. And even though they're both classified as sweet cherries rather than tart cherries, the dark cherries here, the darker cherries, are really more leaning, they have more of a tart flavor than the sweet cherries. So when we go to the store and we want to buy some cherries for eating, almost 100% almost guaranteed that they're going to be sweet cherries. And if we want the sweetest of the crop here, you want to go for the white cherries. Now, I say they're more expensive, they're the premium model. They were more expensive, but I don't think I paid really too much more. They were probably like $1 or $2 a kilo more. You know, when you're talking about cherries, that can quickly add up. You know, people can buy a lot of cherries, and cherries aren't cheap to begin with. You know, I don't know what they're like in other countries, in other areas, but when I buy cherries, people, your good price, your standard price, the price that I would really set a cap at for cherries would be $10 a kilo, which would be what, I don't know, 4 or 5 Australian dollars a pound. You know, I have no idea how to translate that into American dollars or however, but in any case, when I talk about apples or pears or something, that's like $2 a kilo. Whereas cherries, they're really the cutoff rate, I would say, would be $10 a kilo. And yeah, they certainly get more and more than that, especially during the start of the season or the end of the season, where fruit is not even at its best quality, but very expensive, because you always have people that come in, and it doesn't matter what time of year it is, what season it is, they always want a particular kind of fruit, whether it's growing or not, and they're willing to pay top dollar for it, because they have that demand You know, maybe they saw something on MasterChef, maybe they saw something on some other cooking show, and they needed that ingredient, they needed that fruit, they needed that vegetable, and they won't take no for an answer. But anyway, it's just really exciting, exciting stuff. Not just eating these because they're the rich people's cherry, let's say, but just because I get to come out here, I get to experience this new product with you that I haven't tried before, and get to expand my mind a bit, expand the region of controlled space around me. You know, when you're a baby, and most people don't remember that when they were a baby. I do not remember much at all from my childhood. I know some people have memories of when they were like before they could even talk, before they could walk. They have brief memories of what they were like as a baby, sort of like vivid dream sequences going back. But when you're a baby and you're just looking around and your vision isn't even right. I don't know if you know this, but newborn babies, they see everything upside down. Regardless, when you're a baby or when you're a toddler and you're just walking around, even when you like a young child, you're just walking about and you're just looking at everything. And you know, you're constantly asking your parents, you say, what's that? And then they explain that, and then where does it come from? And you see this all the time if you go out, you see parents with their kids, and the kid will just go, why? And the parent will answer, and they'll say, but why, but why, but why? And it's recursive, it goes back and back. Because children, babies, young people, you know, they're very ignorant, and I don't mean that in a negative way, as if they're stupid for not knowing anything. I mean, how could you know anything when you're bloody 2 months old? But you're very ignorant, so you don't know much about the world, so you're just looking around, and everything is just a bunch of unknowns. And in a sense, a known unknown, to get a bit Rumsfeldian with this, a known unknown is much more psychologically debilitating than an unknown unknown, because you can't really be affected by a factor that you don't know about. Whereas if I look at something, if I let's say I've got really bad self-esteem issues, so you know, I'm walking around outside and I'm just looking down like this. I'm looking at my toes the whole time, and I'm constantly walking into things, you know, and it's just a nightmare. But then one day, I don't think anybody's around, so I carefully, slowly lift my gaze up a bit, and what do I see? I see the moon. First time I've ever seen the moon in my life, and I'm just shocked at what I see, you know, because I don't know what this big glowing ball in the sky is. I thought everything was just black, but here we have this moon, and I'm sort of blown away, and you know, my heart's racing, getting palpitations, my adrenaline's pumping. I'm going in fight or flight response, because this thing that I've never seen before, I never even knew it existed, was an unknown, and now suddenly it's bam, it's in my existence. Well, that's really the sort of thing we want to avoid. And that's what I'm trying to do with this cherry review. Because if you go to a foreign country, let's say, and you go into the supermarket and you're looking around, you see all this weird and wonderful produce, and you say, you go down to the supermarket, you say, I want to cook myself something for dinner. You go into the supermarket and you just have no idea about anything that they're stocking there. You know, they're stocking like horse meat and camel milk and bitter melon and long melon and stuff you just don't have any idea how to cook. Well, you're just sort of stuck. You got no idea where to go from that point. But if you wake up one day and you watch my reviews, maybe you've never seen white cherries before, but then you go into the store whenever it's your summer, next time you're in a cherry producing region, you see white cherries, you can give yourself a little nod and you can say, I know about those. I know what is entailed in the white cherry experience. And that's what's really important, because as a human, we want to be as in control of our immediate surroundings, especially the surroundings within our life, within our grasp, as we can be. Because if we don't even know what we're looking at, we're like a man without sauce. We're just lost, basically. So I think that's a good first step in life, is just to look around and identify what it is you're looking at. Know what it is, know what it can do, know what it can be, including yourself, and including white and dark cherries. And with that first step, I hope we can really move forward and start to use some of these elements surrounding us in our life to try and get us into a better space. Because really, that's what developing as a human being is all about. And I really hope that this review helped you out a little bit. I know sitting here, getting to talk to you, has helped me out in some minuscule way, though I have trouble sort of verbalizing or articulating in what way that could be right at this very moment. But nonetheless, it's been good, it's been fun. Now I'll probably go to bed right about now, and whatever awaits you in the day, in the week, in the month, in the coming years, this holiday season, I hope you'll be able to face it and sort of be in control of it. Because I don't know who you are as an individual watching right now, but I do know one thing, and that's that you're strong enough to tackle anything that comes your way. So good luck out there.